Hello friends, welcome back to another lecture on high temperature materials. So far what we have been doing is, we have been trying to understand the influence of high temperature on the behavior of the materials. So we want to compare the behavior of a material at ambient temperature to that of its behavior at high temperature, and want to see how it varies and what are the theoretical underpinnings that causes these changes. In the beginning of this module, we started by considering a general change in the system, and in order to describe that, we began by introducing several thermodynamic parameters. After that, we moved to a visible change or a macroscopic change in the material, and based on that, we saw that the temperature influenced the elastic behavior of the material by virtue of changing the Young's modulus or influencing the Young's modulus. We also saw that in the previous lecture, rather a lengthy one, we saw that the temperature also influences the plastic behavior of the material. The way we arrived at this conclusion is, we looked into the propagation of the dislocation. When the dislocation is easy to propagate, when there is sufficient energy for the dislocation to propagate, then it would mean that correspondingly there is the plastic behavior is exhibited by the material. The easier the dislocation propagates, that means the easily your material would deform plastically. So that is what we related, or we restricted our attention to, or we confined our attention to the propagation of dislocation, and from that we related to that of the plastic behavior of the material. And since the previous one was rather a lengthy lecture, I guess you would have taken sufficient amount of time to listen to it. At the end of that lecture, we showed that there are three ways the high temperature can influence the plastic behavior of the material. One way is by allowing the dislocation to easily propagate, that is by increasing or adding to the energy of the dislocation. The dislocation can easily move or come across or get over any obstacle. That means the dislocation can easily propagate, which can be translated to the plastic behavior of the material. The other way a high temperature or the rise temperature influences the plastic behavior is by activating other slip systems. We saw that when your increase in the thermal energy is sufficiently high, that it is able to overcome the obstacle presented by other slip systems. In addition to the existing slip systems, when your thermal energy is greater than, or it is in combination with the dislocation energy, is able to overcome the obstacle presented by other slip systems, then what ultimately happens is that at high temperature, additional slip systems get activated, and ultimately you have other degree of freedom, so your dislocation can move in other pathways as well. So thereby the plasticity or the plastic behavior of the material is improved at high temperature. And finally, we saw with increase in temperature, the equilibrium concentration of point defect, that is vacancy, also increases. This increase in the number of vacancies reduces the energy of the obstacle, thereby it becomes easy for the dislocation to overcome this obstacle, thereby enhancing the plastic behavior. So this all these influence of temperature on the plasticity of the material was based on the energies of the different defects. For instance, we consider three different energies. So we consider the obstacle energy, which we need to overcome this obstacle energy in order to the dislocation to propagate. We have considered the dislocation energy that comes from the stress that is applied to the material, and the component of stress that is acting on the dislocation, which is a line defect. So we saw that we have this stress that is applied to the material. It introduces or imposes a definite energy that allows the dislocation to propagate, and this we refer to as the dislocation energy. And finally, we had the thermal energy. Now our criteria was, when the combination of dislocation and the thermal energy is able to overcome the obstacle energy, this means that the dislocation can easily propagate, thereby enhancing the plastic behavior of the material. Now, when your dislocation energy falls short of the obstacle energy, without the help of the thermal energy, then the dislocation will not propagate. So the plasticity is restricted. Now when you have sufficient thermal energy, your plasticity can, the dislocation can propagate, so the plasticity is enhanced. Now when your thermal energy is sufficiently high to overcome this, the obstacle presented by other slip systems, then you have additional pathways for the dislocation to move, thereby additionally enhancing the plasticity of the material. Now when you want to define a criteria exclusively based on thermal energy, we brought this here to the right hand side of the expression, and we ultimately showed that when the thermal energy is greater than the difference between the obstacle energy and the dislocation energy, meaning when your thermal energy is greater than the energy required for the dislocation to move along a slip system, then the thermal energy has contributed to the plasticity of the material by permitting the dislocation to move along a definite slip system. Now this obstacle energy here can also be an energy that is required for the nucleation of the dislocation and also propagation of the dislocation. Let me repeat, the obstacle energy here, when we talked about obstacle energy in the previous context, we assumed that there is already a dislocation in place A and it wants to move to a position B, and in between these positions there is an obstacle and the dislocation wants to overcome this. This was the initial pretext of our content in the previous lecture. But this obstacle energy can also be an activation energy that is required for a nucleation of a dislocation and its propagation. Now when you originally have just the dislocation energy alone, when you originally have the energy that comes from the stress component alone or applied load alone, if that energy is unable to overcome this obstacle energy or the activation energy, then there won't be any formation of dislocation, there won't be any plastic behavior. But when there is a combination of thermal and the dislocation energy, when there is a combination of applied stress at high temperature, when there is a significant combination of thermal and the dislocation energy, this combination, if it is able to overcome the activation energy required for the nucleation of dislocation and its propagation, then what you have essentially accomplished is that you have essentially ensured there is a plastic deformation in the material. Now what we have done is, supposing you have the energy that is required for the nucleation and the propagation of dislocation, let that be referred to as the activation energy. Now this activation energy should be overcome by the combination of, or initially it should be overcome by the dislocation energy alone. So in that case, when your dislocation energy or just your load is able to overcome this activation energy, then it would mean that the dislocation can nucleate and it can propagate, meaning the plastic deformation has been initiated. Now when if it is not able to overcome it, if the dislocation energy alone is not able to overcome the activation energy, then every deformation is confined to the elastic region. However, when you have this combination of dislocation energy plus the thermal energy which is able to overcome the activation energy for the nucleation, this is for the nucleation plus propagation of dislocation, when the combination of the thermal energy and the dislocation energy at a definite temperature is able to overcome the activation energy required for the nucleation and propagation of dislocation, it means that what we have essentially done is we have initiated the plastic deformation. Now when you relate a strength of a material to its yield strength, supposing Y1 is the strength of a material at temperature T1, and this is Y1 is nothing but the yield strength. So yield strength is nothing but the stress that is required to cause a plastic deformation. Now at T1, which is around ambient temperature and the thermal energy is not much. So at T1, then the only energy that is responsible for the nucleation and propagation of dislocation would be the dislocation energy 1 or dislocation energy. Now since there is not much component of thermal energy, then this should overcome the activation energy, and only when this activation energy is overcome, you will be able to initiate a plastic deformation. Now, we have already seen that this dislocation energy depends on the stress that you impose. When your imposed stress is less than this yield strength, then there won't be any initiation of plastic deformation. Your energy needs to overcome the activation barrier, and this dislocation energy is dependent on the applied stress, and when their applied stress is less than the yield strength or the stress required to cause plastic deformation, then you won't be able to this sign here, this is the criteria that is required, and when your applied stress is unable to fulfill this criteria, meaning it is less than the yield strength, then there won't be any plastic deformation. However, even though your applied stress is less than yield strength, now what you are doing is you are increasing the temperature. So T1 or T2 is greater than T1. Now what happens is that in addition to the dislocation energy which comes from the same stress that is applied to the material, so there is a stress that is applied to the material which is again less than the yield strength or the yield stress. The same stress is applied, however the temperature is now increased. Now this would add thermal energy to the dislocation, and ultimately the combination of this is able to overcome the activation energy. So this criteria is fulfilled by increasing the temperature. So that means even though the applied stress is less than the yield stress, you are able to achieve a plastic deformation. Let me repeat, just by increasing the temperature, by including the thermal energy to the dislocation energy, the combination of energies is able to overcome the activation energy required to nucleate and propagate a dislocation. So this means even though the applied stress is the same, just by increasing the temperature you have achieved plastic deformation. Therefore, the yield stress at 2, that is corresponding to T2, will be less than that of yield stress at 1 corresponding to, or rather the accurate way of writing is something like this, at T1 is less than the yield stress at 1, should be 2 here, yeah. So now what we have essentially done is, by increasing the temperature, we were able to achieve, or we were able to reduce the yield strength, or we were able to achieve for a given stress which is initially less than the yield stress at temperature T1. Using the same stress, we were able to achieve plastic deformation just by increasing the temperature. So what it means ultimately is that the yield stress at which the plastic deformation happens decreases with increasing temperature. So this happens because in addition to the dislocation energy, we have included thermal energy. So therefore, with increase in temperature, we have reduced essentially the stress that is required to initiate or nucleate and propagate a dislocation. In other words, by increasing the temperature, we have achieved plastic deformation by using a certain stress that is less than the yield stress at ambient temperature. So what one can say is, with increase in temperature, the strength of the material, by referring to strength I mean the yield strength of the material, decreases. With increase in temperature, let me repeat, the yield strength of the material decreases. In other words, just by increasing the temperature for a low amount of stress, you will be able to achieve plastic deformation. So with increase in temperature, the yield strength decreases, or at high temperature, plastic deformation sets in at less stress, at a stress that is less than yield stress at room temperature. So this is one of the features or one of the behavior of materials at high temperature. Just by increasing the temperature, you are adding thermal energy. The combination of thermal energy and the dislocation energy is able to overcome the activation energy. This activation energy is required for the nucleation and propagation of dislocation. So the combination is able to overcome this activation energy. Therefore, the combination of dislocation and the thermal energy is able to introduce plastic deformation in a system which was not previously observed at room temperature. So, the strength of the material, it decreases with increase in temperature. So, this is one of the behavior that we need to understand. Now, let us get back to our propagation of dislocation. So, we have seen that the propagation of dislocation is made easier at high temperature. We have seen that, or it is understandable that the activation energy, by overcoming the activation energy required for nucleation and propagation of dislocation, the plastic behavior is achieved at low stress at high temperatures. Now, let us go back to the propagation of the dislocation. So, again we defined the dislocation energy, which is based on, or which is dependent on the stress, pardon me, and there is we have, in addition to the dislocation energy, a thermal energy and an obstacle energy. Now, we saw that when you want to have a criteria just based on the thermal energy, it should be able to overcome the difference between the obstacle energy and the dislocation energy. Only when this criteria is able, we are able to overcome this criteria, the dislocation can propagate, thereby translating to the plastic deformation. Now, we have in the previous lecture referred to this combination or the difference between the obstacle and the dislocation energy as the delta E required. Now, only when this criteria is fulfilled, then the thermal energy has achieved its purpose, the thermal energy has enhanced the plastic deformation of the material. Now, we saw that when you want to overcome this, the probability that a dislocation would overcome this particular or the required energy or the required energy for the propagation is through this expression. We have expressed it in this manner, kappa T. And we saw with increase in the temperature, this probability increases. That means as the temperature rises, the dislocation, the probability of the dislocation to overcome it increases, thereby increasing the plastic deformation of the, or thereby enhancing the plastic deformation of the material. So, this was how we ended this section of our last lecture. Now, again, let me reiterate this. We saw when we talked about a three-dimensional case, we saw that this should be 3 kappa T, and since what we are talking about is a dislocation and it's a line defect, and we have reduced the degree of freedom, so we just have kappa T here. Now, supposing, let us try to further quantify. Instead of we just confined ourselves in the probability, we just by virtue of this probability in the previous lecture, we stated that with increasing temperature, it means that the probability of the dislocation to overcome the obstacle increases. So, we can relate that with increasing temperature, the obstacle will, or the dislocation will overcome the obstacle, meaning it will enhance our plasticity. That's how we ended our previous lecture. Now, we will try to work further on this. We will try to quantify more of this probability, and we will see at what rate will such a overcome, or will such a propagation will be possible. At what rate will the dislocation be able to overcome at a temperature, dislocation will be able to overcome the obstacle at a temperature T. So, what we have so far been confined to was the probability. Let's just even more make it more specific. We will consider the rate at which that such propagation would happen, such propagation over the obstacle would happen. So, for that, let us introduce the frequency of vibration. Now, we have seen that when you increase the temperature, there is a frequency of vibration under which are in this frequency the atoms vibrate. So, we have seen with increase in temperatures, atoms vibrate, and there is a definite frequency of vibration, and this according to this frequency the atoms would vibrate. Now, one can, based on this frequency of vibration of a particular atom, based on that one can extrapolate and calculate the frequency of vibration of a dislocation. After all, dislocation is a line defect, and atom in its position, it's a point, and one can, based on that line and based on that point, one can construct a line and calculate the frequency of vibration of a dislocation. Supposing I refer to the frequency of vibration of a dislocation as something like this. So, this is the frequency of vibration of a dislocation. Now, when you have something like that, the rate at which the dislocation will overcome an obstacle, or will overcome the required energy at temperature T, the rate at which this would happen is expressed as something like this. what we have just done is we have coupled the probability of a dislocation to overcome the obstacle to that of the frequency at which the dislocation is oscillating because of the thermal energy. So ultimately what we have done is we have now the frequency of oscillation of dislocation, which is again dependent on temperature, because higher the temperature, the greater would be your oscillation of the individual atoms, and depending on the oscillation of your individual atoms, the frequency at which the dislocation also will increase, even though this is proportional to the frequency of the oscillation of the individual atoms. Let us write it something like this. This is often is less than or equal to that of the individual atoms. So for a given temperature, you have your atoms oscillating, and because of this oscillation, your entire line defect, that is the dislocation, will also oscillate. But often the translation is not exact, that is the oscillation rate at which your atom is vibrating will not be equal to the rate of oscillation at which your dislocation is oscillating. There will be a small difference, but there is also a possibility in perfect crystals, that is the oscillation of individual atoms and the oscillation of dislocations are equal. Now by combining this frequency of oscillation or the rate of oscillation to that of the probability, we were able to show that the rate at which the dislocation will be able to overcome the obstacle. Now if you consider the distance between the point A to point B, so if you consider the distance between point A to point B as something A, so you have a certain distance that your dislocation needs to cover, and that distance be A, you have your rate of oscillation, you have your probability, then one can calculate the velocity of dislocation. The velocity of dislocation is the product of the distance the dislocation needs to cover, the rate of oscillation of the dislocation, and the probability of the dislocation to overcome the obstacle at a given temperature. Again, this is not r, this is kappa, Boltzmann's constant. So the velocity of a dislocation while it propagates depends on the distance that is covering, and the vibration that or the frequency of vibration that the whole dislocation, not the individual atom but the whole dislocation, is experiencing, and the probability of the dislocation to overcome any obstacle during in its pathway. So combination of these three will give you the velocity of dislocation. Now the velocity of dislocation, then since these factors, both the probability is dependent on T, and also we have seen that the frequency of oscillation of the dislocation through the frequency of oscillation of the atom is dependent on C. Therefore ultimately the velocity at which the dislocation propagates is also dependent on C. Now additionally, we have also seen that with increase in the point defects, the obstacle energy also will decrease. So it is possible that with increase in the temperature, the obstacle energy would change. So that is also dependent on temperature. So that means this factor here would also be dependent on temperature, but there are other factors which are already dependent on temperature to make the velocity of dislocation dependent on temperature. So even if the obstacle energy is varied with temperature or not, we have other factors that show that the velocity of the dislocation is dependent on temperature. So what we mean is, as the temperature increases, the velocity at which the dislocation propagates would change. Now when we introduce the term velocity of a definite behavior, like when we talk about a behavior of a material in terms of velocity, when we talk about a change in certain material properties or certain material behavior in terms of velocity, what we are essentially doing is we are introducing the component of time. Introducing, by virtue of this velocity, we are introducing the component of time. So what I mean by that is, when you talk about the velocity of a dislocation, so what I mean by that is, when you consider a definite amount of time, there is a definite distance the dislocation would cover. Say for instance, at t1, for a given time t, the distance covered by the dislocation will be x1. Okay. So let us say that at a given temperature T1 for a given time T, say let's assume it's 10 seconds. So for a given time T, of course it's a very huge time to consider, but let's, for the argument's sake, let's assume it's 10 seconds. At temperature T1 for a given time T, the dislocation would cover a distance of x. Now when you just rise the temperature, you are not changing any stress, you are not changing the stress conditions, you are not changing the time, you are calculating for the time T, and now the distance covered will be x2. Now depending on the velocity, the x1 and x2 will vary. Supposing your T2 is greater than the temperature you are considering now, that is T2 is greater than T1, then depending on the influence of temperature on the dislocation velocity, the x1 and x2 will vary. The relation between x1 and x2 will vary. Now the dislocation velocity, if it is higher at higher temperature, then the distance covered by the dislocation will also be higher for a given time. So that means when the velocity, which is dependent on temperature, at T2 is greater than the velocity at temperature T1, that means the distance covered by the dislocation at temperature T2 will be greater than the distance covered by the dislocation at temperature T1. So based on our understanding, our formulation of dislocation velocity, we can say that this condition is true, meaning higher the temperature, higher would be the dislocation velocity or the rate at which the dislocation would propagate. So higher the temperature, so higher would be the velocity of the dislocation. So that would mean that for a given time T at T1 or for a given time T, the distance covered by the dislocation at T2 will be greater than that of the distance covered at T1. So when I say dislocation covers an additional distance just by increasing the temperature for a given time, by increasing the temperature, just by increasing the temperature, the distance covered by the dislocation is higher. So what I mean by that is the dislocation for a given time will become more pronounced. It becomes more pronounced. You will be able to see a visible change in the dislocation for a given time when you increase the temperature. So what I am doing is I am studying two materials and applying same condition of loading, and I am viewing it for same amount of time, for same duration of time. And if I see the plastic deformation exhibited by one versus the other, I could see the material at the higher temperature exhibited a greater degree of plasticity when compared to that of the material at the lower temperature or the ambient temperature. The reason is because of the enhanced velocity for a given time, the material at high temperature, the dislocation of the material at high temperature is propagated a larger distance, thereby reflecting that or translating that, you would be able to observe a pronounced plastic deformation for the same time period. Now we can look at this problem in another manner, meaning when I increase the time, instead of keeping the time constant at high temperature, when I increase the time of the loading condition, then it would mean that greater my time, greater will be the amount of distance the dislocation will propagate. So in this thought experiment, what we have considered, or in this example what we have considered, in the example above, what we have considered was, we have considered same time for two different temperatures, and we saw at high temperature the distance covered by the dislocation is higher because the velocity of the dislocation is higher. Since the distance covered by the dislocation is higher, that means that the plastic deformation will be more pronounced at the high temperature when you compare it to the low or ambient temperature. Now what I am doing is I am just focusing on one temperature, that is high temperature, so which in our previous case was T2. So I am just focusing on one constant high temperature, but now I am comparing the same with two different times, so T1 which is less than T2. So when I have a definite velocity because of constant temperature, a high temperature, then I have two time, I am considering in two different duration, say 10 seconds and the 20 seconds. Now the velocity is the same, temperature is the same. So what are the constants here? So the velocity is the same, velocity of the dislocation is the same because the temperature is the same and the applied stress is also the same. So only thing that is varying is the varying parameter is the time. Now when you vary the time, you see the similar behavior, that is the x2, the distance covered by a dislocation at time t2. So maybe if I write it becomes more clear, will be greater than that of x1, that is the distance covered by the dislocation during the duration t1. So what we have ultimately seen is, with increase in time, the distance covered by the dislocation also increases. So we have arrived at the similar results when we consider two different temperatures, same material, same stress, same time. At two different temperatures, we saw that the distance covered by a dislocation at higher temperature was greater than the distance covered by dislocation at low temperature. So then we said, so in that case, the plastic deformation is more pronounced at the high temperature. So that was our conclusion in the previous example. We saw x2 was greater than x1, that is distance covered by the dislocation was higher at the high temperature, lower at the low temperature. So based on that, we concluded the plastic deformation was more pronounced at high temperature. Now what we did in the second example here, what we did was we just we fixed the temperature, we fixed the stress. By fixing the temperature, we also fixed the dislocation velocity. And now we just increase the duration, and we arrive at the similar result, that with increase in the time, the distance covered by the dislocation increases. That means when you increase the time, the plastic deformation exhibited by the material will also increase. So now what we have observed is a time dependent deformation. The example, the second example, what we see is a, pardon my shabby writing here, it's time dependent deformation. So ultimately, just by increasing or holding the temperature of a material for a longer duration, you were able to observe, without increasing any stress, without increasing the temperature, you were able to observe a significant increase in the plastic behavior of the material. So what it concludes is, the behavior of a material is dependent on time at high temperatures. So this temperature or time dependent behavior, time dependent deformation of material is referred to as creep. So creep, even though we generally associate it with a high temperature study of material or a test that we go and the test that we prefer in order to understand the high temperature properties of the material. So this would be the go-to test to understand the high temperature property of the material, even though it is perceived in that manner. The fundamental definition of creep is to understand the behavior of a material with respect to time. So the creep in principle it studies the time dependent behavior, the time dependent plastic behavior of the material. But since the time dependent behavior of the material, the time dependent deformation of the material is more pronounced at increased temperature, since the time dependent behavior of the material is clearly visible, or it makes an absolute sense, or it makes a significant sense, or it's a meaningful sense rather, at high temperature, we combine creep with high temperature, or we attribute creep to high temperature. So what we will be studying, or what we have been doing, or in this lecture what I will be doing is, I am trying to introduce you to, or give a right introduction to, an appropriate introduction to creep, so that we are moving into the second module, wherein we will be talking about the behavior of the material, particularly the mechanical behavior of the material at high temperatures in terms of creep. So what creep is nothing but the way it is in principle defined is that creep actually studies the time dependent behavior of the material. With time, how the behavior of the material would change. Since with time, or this behavior with respect to time is more pronounced at increased temperature, we directly relate creep to the high temperature behavior, or we use creep to understand high temperature behavior of the materials. Now in addition to this influence of high temperature, or the role of high temperature in influencing or in making the time dependent deformation more pronounced. Supposing if I take if I study the time dependent behavior in room temperature, it would be highly insignificant when you compare to that of the time dependent deformation at high temperature, and that is the reason why we study creep at or we attribute or we relate creep to high temperature. In addition to this reason, we also wanted, or the applications wherein the materials are exposed to high temperatures, or the materials or the high temperature materials, or the application based on wherein the high temperature materials are used, they are also exposed for a given stress and a given condition for a prolonged period of time. So in addition to the theoretical understanding of what creep is and why at high temperature the time dependent deformation plays a vital role in addition to all these theoretical understanding, one can relate the condition experienced by a material in creep to directly to that of the application. Supposing if you have a turbine and the turbine is experiencing a given stress, or the turbine material is experiencing a given stress at a high temperature for a prolonged period of time, high temperature tensile testing would not recreate that. Any other testing methods would not recreate that except for the creep. In creep, what we do is we hold or we consider the time, or we prolong the duration to which the material is, or we prolong the condition under which the material will experience the mechanical condition that it is exposed to in the real life applications. So we create a setup that is more or less similar to that of the real life application, and that is one of the reasons why the studies on high temperature materials prefer creep. So there are two reasons why we want to focus on creep when we want to study mechanical behavior of materials at high temperature. So one is the time dependent deformation becomes more pronounced at high temperature when you compare it to the ambient temperature. So that is one of the reasons to focus on creep. The other reason is it is more relatable to the environment the material is exposed to at applications, in an application. So at high temperature, when you talk about high temperature applications, the environment to which a material is exposed to, it is more relatable in case of when you talk about creep than in any other testing methods. Of course, there is high temperature tensile testing, but for all practical purposes, when you talk about from the practical point of view, when you change the strain rates within a practical limit, not to make it impact like an impact testing, when you change the strain rate within a practical limit, then the time dependent deformation will not be clearly visible in tensile testing, and therefore one will not be able to relate the high temperature tensile testing to that of the environment, the high temperature environment the material would be exposed to in an application. So the relatable one is then creep. So this is why the reason why one would want to focus on creep when you want to study the behavior of high temperature material, particularly the mechanical behavior of high temperature materials. Now, the another way one could see creep is, so far what we have been talking about when we talk about in this whole of this structure and the previous one, what we have been talking about is the plastic deformation of the material. So we saw that with increase in temperature for a given time, the plastic behavior of the material would be more pronounced or enhanced. We also saw that for a given temperature, when you increase the time, the plastic behavior of the material becomes more significant, and that is the reason why we need to have a testing setup wherein we don't want to focus on stress, we don't want to focus on the temperature, we just don't want to, the only focus should not be on the temperature alone, the only focus should not be on the stress alone, but a critical component should also be with the time, should also be time, and that is the reason we use creep testing to study high temperature materials. Now all these discussions have been confined to the plastic behavior of the material. So it is also possible that the elastic region exhibits something similar to that of the creep. So it has been observed that the elastic region would exhibit something similar to creep, and that behavior is referred to as the anelastic behavior. So in elastic region, when you see creep-like behavior in the elastic region, so creep-like behavior or creep-like you see when you monitor the change in the stress and strains, and if you see the strain is dependent on time, then within the elastic region you see that the elastic strain is dependent on time within the it is dependent on time, and that means that it is a creep-like behavior, and this is referred to as the anelastic behavior. So the reason I am introducing this is because creep is not something that is confined to the plastic region alone. You observe it in the elastic region as an anelastic behavior. So what I mean by that is, supposing your temperature is an ambient temperature, and what you have here is the strain, and again we are focusing on the elastic region. So let's have the elastic strain in the y-axis, and let's have the time in the x-axis, because as we have defined earlier, creep is a study, or what we are studying in creep is the time dependent behavior of the materials. So at the x-axis you have your time, and at the y-axis you have your elastic strain. Now when you consider an ambient temperature, so T ambient, there is not much thermal contribution. Now say at T0 you are imposing an elastic stress that is increasing your elastic strain. You are imposing a stress that is increasing your elastic strain to say 1 or some value that so at T0 you are imposing a stress and it is causing an elastic strain. Now when you keep on holding that stress for a prolonged period of time, say from T0 to T1, so you are holding that stress that has contributed to a definite elastic strain, you are holding it from T0 to T1. At ambient temperature there won't be any change in the strain, and once you release the temperature, or once you release the stress at T1, the entire system gets back to normal. So you have a complete and an ideal elastic behavior. So what this example 1 or the case 1 shows is, at ambient temperature, when you increase the when you hold the stress that causes a definite elastic strain for a definite period of time, that is T0 to T1, the amount of elastic strain remains constant, and once you release the load, this being an elastic strain, it goes back to its normal, and the elastic strain then becomes 0. So this would be loading, if you want, this would be loading region, and this would be, let's have a different color, so this would be loading, and this here would be unloading, and ultimately you don't see any definite change in the dimensions or definite change in the elastic strain is not changed. The elastic strain has got back to normal, and even between T0 and T1 there is no change in the elastic strain, it has remained constant. Now let us assume a case 2 wherein you have increased the temperature. Now again let me remind you, we are just talking about the elastic region, we are nowhere considering the plastic region, is just confined to the elastic region. We have the similar setup, we are just considering the elastic strain and we are considering the time here. Now what would happen is, if at T0, like in the previous case, if at T0 if I impose a load and that causes a definite elastic strain, now as I hold this load from T0 to T1, then what would happen is, when you have an anelastic creep like behavior, what would happen is there would be an increase in the elastic strain. Again I am talking about just about the elastic region, I am talking just about the elastic strain. However, just because we have increased our temperature, say T ambient to T2, what we can observe in crystalline materials at least is that, in some crystalline materials at least, is that by prolonging the time of loading, that is when you apply the same amount of load from T0 to T1, in the ambient temperature the elastic strain was constant, but in high temperature the elastic strain would gradually increase. And now when you unload at T2, when you release the load that causes the elastic strain, it will again try to reduce the strain, but it will have a definite strain at T1. Unlike the ambient temperature, wherein at T1 the elastic strain was back to 0, in T1 at high temperature there will be a definite elastic strain. However, unlike plastic strain, it will not stay as it is, it will gradually reduce after T1. So let me redraw it to make it consistent. So this strain here is not a plastic strain. It doesn't mean that it will stay, it is irreversible, it will stay there for a very long time. It is not like that. However, there is a definite amount of elastic strain which will not come to 0 at T1 once the load is released. It will gradually come to 0 even after the load is released. So this is what we refer to as creep-like behavior in the elastic region, or the creep behavior in the elastic region, or the anelastic behavior. So what we have observed is the creep behavior is just not confined to plastic strain. The time dependent deformation is not confined to plastic region or a plastic behavior of the material. It is also observed in the elastic region of the material. However, the anelastic behavior does not translate to a permanent plastic deformation. It just translates to a deformation that takes quite longer time in order to get back to its original position. The elastic deformation which takes quite some longer time to get back to its original position. This is observed at high temperature. When you consider your ambient temperature, the loading and the unloading, and in between there is no change in the strain. The elastic strain remains constant, and once you have unloaded your sample, it gets back to zero. However, in case of the high temperature elastic behavior, you could see that there is an increase, a gradual increase in the elastic strain, even though you don't increase the load. All you are doing is holding it for a lengthy period of time. There will be a gradual increase in the elastic strain, unlike at room temperature. It is at high temperature, and this gradual increase, in addition to this gradual increase, there will also be a remnant elastic strain at T1 once you have unloaded the sample. Even after unloading the sample, there will be a remnant elastic strain which will gradually dissipate with time. So this is a creep related anelastic behavior. So what we have seen so far is, we have seen that at high temperature the time dependent behavior or time dependent deformation becomes more pronounced, and for that we use creep to study the high temperature behavior or mechanical behavior of the material. The other reason is, it is easy for us to relate it to the environment the material would be exposed to at real life application. So even though we will be studying it in terms of plastic deformation, it doesn't mean that the creep behavior is confined to the plastic deformation. It is also observed, we have seen that it is also possible that such a behavior can be observed in the elastic region as well. So that we call it as an anelastic behavior, and we have seen that in this anelastic behavior, even though there is no permanent change in the dimensions of the material, we can say that not to resume to its original state, at high temperatures the material would take comparatively a longer duration. So with this, I would like to wind this lecture up. So what we have essentially done is, we have transitioned from the regular conventional change at high temperature to a specific change at high temperature, that is a creep behavior at high temperature. So our subsequent lectures will focus on understanding this creep behavior. So thanks for your time, and let's see ourselves in the next lectures, wherein we will focus more on understanding the creep behavior of the material. See you then. Bye.